How's it going, everyone? This is Torres, and I'm here to chat about baseball and the recent integration we've had within OpenField. So let's get to it. So we're going to chat a little bit about athlete monitoring and some of the things to look at, algorithm development, so how we came up with swing and pitches, and a little bit about what they look like. And then the most important is application of data. Where are you seeing the value from it once you collect this information? So I'd like to focus on the 3 R's as just kind of 3 different perspectives, and risk, readiness, return to play are the big 3. Risk being, where is the athlete day 1 through day 30, and how is that fluctuated? And if he's had a large increase or a large decrease, is that significant or not for that individual athlete? Readiness is where that athlete is peaking on any given day, whether it be within the week or within the month, and is that occurring in a practice or game setting? We want to be able to quantify that and capture it. And return to play, and understanding return to play protocol. So if an athlete does get injured, where were they in a healthy state pre-injury, and how do we give them a progression model to slowly build them back up to that? So some different things that we get from athlete monitoring is trying to improve performance. So we want to optimize their performance and understand from a rehab standpoint where they're at, and then also provide athletes and provide coaches with feedback. And that's a critical one I'll hit on throughout this presentation, is how do we drive value out of this, and how do we understand what the data means? How do we communicate that effectively to the coach? So here are some different metrics that we're quantifying with baseball. Some ones that you might have heard before that are used in multiple sports is player load, and that's a measure of activity volume. And then it gets more specific into pitch load and swing load, and quantifying the count and the intensity of each. And then looking at high intensity movements. So how explosive are you in that given session? If you're out there and trying to do explosive work in a conditioning session, or you're doing a lot of base running, we want to be able to quantify that. So here is an example of identifying a pitch, and we kind of have a zoomed out view right now, and you can see a very distinctive pattern that we're able to capture very accurately. So if we zoom in a little bit, we can now see the profile of what a pitch looks like. So we're looking at a few different things. We're looking at our accelerometers and our gyroscopes. Our accelerometers are at the top there, and gyroscopes are located at the bottom. So what we're doing is we're identifying, based on all 6 of these parameters, what pattern is coming out of it, whether it's yes, a pitch, or no, it's not a pitch. So that as you collect more and more information, we are getting more and more accurate with understanding different mechanics from different pitchers and how to quantify those accurately. So this is the output of it, right? The graph on the previous slide isn't going to tell us a lot in terms of feeding information back to a coach. So we're able to quantify by pitch what each pitch load looks like, and you start to see a natural transition of warm-up into full strength. And they could be pitching in a game or pitching in a practice. In this scenario, they're just pitching in a practice, just doing a little bit of a long toss. So we're able to clearly see different thresholds and start to track those thresholds per athlete. What does a high intensity pitch look like for that specific athlete? And over the course of, let's say he goes into pitch 90, pitch 95, how is that trend going? Are we on a constant fluctuation, or are we decreasing or increasing? And starting to dive a little bit, and is that athlete fatiguing, or is he still feeling confident and comfortable out in the mound? Now we go into identifying a swing, and we're again looking at those 6 metrics where we're seeing the not only forward, sideways, and up accelerometers, but we're getting that gyroscope and identifying the pattern just like we did in the pitch. Again, this isn't very useful in terms of feeding that information back to a coach. So what we're able to push out is something like this. We're very similar to the pitch graph. We're able to see the intensity per swing. So this one's a little bit different, and you might not have a warm-up phase, so you're not going to see that natural transition. But it is interesting to see where that athlete is peaking throughout the session, throughout each swing, and the back end of this you can see starts picking up in intensity. Obviously, in order to understand it, we need to put context to it and collect more information. This one snapshot isn't going to give us a great level of detail, but it begins to establish the threshold for this individual athlete. And we can start to quantifying what a low day or what a low intensity looks like for that athlete one in this case. And here's an example of what you could get on a practice report readout, where you have a session breakdown. You have 4 athletes on here, and you have not only the total pitches that they captured in, but flag it based on is that a low or high day, and average load per pitch, total load pitch. You see that here. Sorry about that. Average time between pitches. So how often are they resting? And then we go ahead and graph that on the other slides here. So we're able to see not only, are they high, but relative. So what the red bar is telling me is relative to that specific athlete's average. Athlete 5 in this case, looking at load versus count. Is that high on that given day for that athlete's 2 to 3 weeks of data? And we do the same philosophy looking at load and drill breakdown, and that gets back to the kind of the 3 R's, where we're looking at not only readiness and where they're peaking, but risk, right? If they've elevated and increased for the last 3 days in a row, well, that might be an issue, and we can identify that in the system and flag that up, and that's where it gets into asking more and more questions and able to understand what the data is showing us. So when we're talking about the 3 R's, we're able to look at these categories and give a variable against them. Player load can go across all 3, for example, where my load is assessing risk in the sense that if I know my baseline, and let's say I've captured 30 days of data, I'm able to quantify what percentage of increase that is in day 31, whether it's a drop, an increase, or it's right on par with the average, and put it against what I want to achieve, right? Is my actual versus planned very different, and is that what I'm setting out to do? Whereas readiness is saying within the week or within the month, where am I peaking, where am I dropping off? Do I have a natural fluctuation, or am I just trying to increase volume throughout the week, which is decreasing my level of intensity? And then the return to play again, it's looking at a couple different ones, player load being the biggest, but we can get into IMA, so that's an interesting one where we're able to benchmark where an athlete is at a healthy state, and if from a left to right perspective, if he's able to explode, cut off his left, cut off his right, decelerate, accelerate. And here's an example from a risk perspective. So we can see over the course of 20 days where this particular athlete is from an intensity metric. So what we're looking at here is load divided by the duration that they're out there. And what's interesting in this perspective is you can clearly see day 1 being on the far left here, slow deterioration, where he's dropping off in load over that 20-day period. And what we can gather from that is what's happening is you're increasing the volume, he's decreasing the amount of intensity. And not only is that a possible red flag, but it could be, is that what we wanted to do? Because we added 2 to 3 periods after, in day 15 and on that we didn't account for, and it's able to quantify that to say, okay, well, maybe his intensity is dropping off and the volume's continuing to increase. That could be a very clear indicator that he could be at an elevated risk of injury. And readiness, so this slide is showing us player-to-player comparison, and look at the far left in this particular athlete, we're able to understand that he is a lot, if you look at him in comparison to the athlete on the far right, he's nearly triple that workload, and then on average, he's probably about 20 to 30% elevated versus the rest of the team. So this is saying, hey, this might be a guy that you want to keep a close eye on. He could just be a high performer and be able to tolerate that increased load or that elevated load that he in comparison to the team, or it might say, hey, you need to make sure that this guy is you're keeping a close eye on him week in and week out, because before he might be in the middle of the pack, and later throughout the season now he's starting to sit up at the top, and we need to be able to manage that. So this is giving us that ability and assessing, okay, where is he fall in line, not only with the team, but more importantly within his individual metrics and his thresholds. So that's it on my end. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. My email is just right there. Again, this is a very quick snapshot on some of the metrics we're adding into baseball, and we're continuing to evolve it, and it's a very new space for us. So we're really excited. Love to hear your feedback. And again, if you have any questions, shoot through an email to me. Thanks, guys.